Good afternoon. This is Tony Libertor. I'm Associate Principal at Fort Vancouver High School and Vancouver Public Schools. And with me today is Coach Filomon Afenegus of the Columbia River Soccer Program. This is the VPS Game Time podcast. It's not the X's and O's. Coach Philly, thanks for being here with us. Let's just talk a little bit right now, initially, about your program success. You guys, both the boys and girls programs, the girls won state title in the fall again. Just off the top of my head, I think for you and your programs, that's the fourth state title in 8 seasons.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Right, and so the boys have gone, they went first and second in 2018 and 19. Mm-hmm. The girls have been to 5 straight Final Fours.
Correct.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. Why do you coach, and is the winning for you? How do you balance the winning with setting up a culture?
So for me, the way I look at it is if you focus on the process, you oftentimes have a good product. If you do it the other way around and you only focus on the product, I think you lose sight of what is important in the process, and you're so fixated on winning that you stop thinking about the systems and the processes that you need to have in place in order to win. And so for me, winning, I'm a competitive person. We're always going to strive for excellence on the field, and we're always going to try to hit our ceiling. But at the end of the day, for me, it's got to be about the process. If you focus on the process, that will force the result, is kind of the way I look at things.
Okay. So I wanted you to, tell a little bit more about this story. And I was with your team in 2018, and it was the semifinals. You guys had lost the 8 o'clock game, and that's a quick turnaround, because if you lose that 8 o'clock game on Friday night, you play at noon on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that stuck out to me is, I'm not privy to all of your halftime speeches and pregame speeches, but that one, because it was before we got on the bus, you wanted to talk to your players about perseverance and, really hard things. And you brought up a personal story about your youth mother, and can you elaborate a little bit on that and why you brought that up to your girls team?
Yeah, so part of how I look at coaching, I see it as, if you're a leader in any field, it's your responsibility to motivate and inspire, and sometimes you got to be creative in how you do that. And so the girls had lost that 8 o'clock game against White River, or against, Seahome, and they were just devastated, and they were just broken, and we lost in a shootout, and we were playing against one of the best teams in the state, and they left everything out there. And I just knew that in order for us to be successful on that final day, the 3rd and 4th place game, they were going to need some bit of inspiration to carry with them into the 3rd and 4th place game if we're going to be successful. And so it just kind of dawned on me, like, what was essentially they were going to need to be able to have that grit and the ability to persevere. And so I just wanted to share a story from my own personal life. And my family is first generation immigrants. We grew up in a small country called Eritrea, and at the time there was a civil war going on between Eritrea and Ethiopia. And my mom was telling me the story of the village that we were in was being bombed, and probably 100 yards away, like she could hear it and feel the impact of it. And so she decided that we got to get the heck out of there. And so she walked our family across the desert and got us to Sudan, and eventually we ended up coming to the States. And so my message to the players was, I know it hurts, I know it's difficult, but you have an unbelievable amount of strength within you, and you just got to dig down in this game and carry that pain, and it's okay that it still hurts. But let's use that as fuel going into the 3rd and 4th place game and end our season with a win.
Right, and you guys did end with it. And one thing that stuck out to me when I why I wanted you to share that is just the perspective, right? I mean, yes, it's a quick turnaround,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of things going on in the world that this, a quick turnaround is not that bad.
Yeah.
And and like you said, the girls came out, took third, and there's only 2 teams really that end the season on a win, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know you wanted to be playing in that 4:00 game with a win, but but that's good. So, you talked a little bit about the culture, and one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, who do you, what do you read and whatnot? I asked you to share an excerpt from a coaching book or a leadership book that you have read, and you brought up Quiet Strength by Tony Dungy. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So, there's been a lot of people who have influenced the way I try to build a culture, but one individual who really stands out was Tony Dungy, and it was just always really unique. You'd see him from afar and how he ran his teams, and he wasn't the loud, demonstrative individual, but he still had a very positive effect when it came to outcome.
Right.
His teams were very successful. He built good teams at Tampa Bay and then at Indianapolis. And so I got his book and I read it, and again, it just went back to the whole idea of focusing on the process and not the product. And he was a really genuine human being, and he did things the right way in the way he treated his players, his staff, and he just had a really healthy perspective. And I remember just one of the stories of him talking about a lot of times when players get cut, they'll have the general manager go and talk to the player, but he felt that it was important for him to have the face-to-face conversation with the player to give them that feedback, and just doing even the hard things the right way. Intentional.
Right.
But everything is so critically important in having a healthy culture, and and for him, it's very much focusing on the process, and he wanted to always be a transformational coach as opposed to a transactional coach.
Sure.
Right? We hear that term a lot,
yeah.
And there are a lot of great examples of ways that he would do that in that book.
So the excerpt that you shared is that Dungy writes that the Super Bowl isn't the ultimate victory.
Correct.
So, elaborate on that. When you think, again, you've won 4 state titles. Here's Tony Dungy winning the Super Bowl. How do you relate to that then if that's not the ultimate victory?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, as a coach, you're always evolving, right? As a human being, you're always evolving. And when I got done playing college soccer and I started coaching, it was just about winning for me, right? Like, it was literally like, let's win and let's do whatever it takes to win. And then as I started getting older, I started having a little bit more clarity, and I, came to the conclusion that, like, I want it to be more than just about winning. Like, I want my players to be able to acquire values that they are going to use the rest of their lives. That goes beyond the field. And so had a chance to kind of reflect and evolve in the way I would practice things. And again, it just would always come full circle to, if in order to do that, I have to have a healthy culture, and a big part of that is I have to do it the right way. I have to take the time to build healthy relationships with my players, and I have to also afford them the opportunity to build healthy relationships with each other. And then we teach character along the way, and we reinforce character along the way. And the result of that has been 4 state championships.
Right.
As we're early in my life, it's like, let's go win a state championship. And that was a primary focus. Now it's, our goal is to try to hit our ceiling, whatever it is. And if we focus on the process and do things the right way, care about kids, a lot of times the winning takes care of itself.
And that doesn't mean, and we don't have to get too specific, but I mean, that doesn't mean your team doesn't have problems.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that, again, you're intentional on how you're going to deal with those. So give a little bit of maybe your intentional structure of, how you deal when there's a team issue, maybe player to player.
Yeah, so, I think a big part of running a healthy culture is never leaving anything to chance.
Right.
Right. And so literally, I love the quote, begin with the end in mind. So you think about the very end of your season and how you want your players to perform and execute, and then you literally work back from there. And it's almost like you think about all of the things that could possibly go wrong, and you put systems in place to prevent that from even happening.
Right.
So like for me, for example, like parents can be a great asset to your program, and they can really be there to support what you're doing. So the kids are getting the message from you and from them, but parents can also have a negative impact as well too. And so like early on during tryouts, I usually send an email every single day after tryouts expressing to them like what we're looking for and like what we're doing and why we're doing it, just to try to get them on board early on. And then after that tryout week, I'll send an email out every Sunday just to communicate why we're doing things. So your son may play on a Tuesday, but then on Thursday we're playing against a rival, and there's not going to be very much playing time, and it comes, so just
Sure.
And so just thinking through all of those types of things with the parents. And I know they're very appreciative of the communication. And then with players, a lot of people do this in setting up core values,
Right.
and having them pick the core values. And for us, we want to also make sure that we're reinforcing those core values. And so every Friday, our leadership team gets together and they decide who earns what we call our legacy shirts. So it's pretty much an award that we give out every Friday. And the power is in the fact that our leaders are deciding, and they're looking for those individuals that are, living out our core values. And so then it just kind of breeds a culture of, it's not just about winning. Like, we want to build character. These are our core values. And oftentimes the person who scores the game-winning goal gets all the attention. But in our program, we want to focus on the kid who's hitting a home run every day, putting the effort in, having a positive attitude. And so that is part of how we do that. And, in addition to, we talk about chemistry. And so one thing that we have done as a program is, if you're not intentional, what always ends up happening is you'll start to develop cliques. And so we've established a system called Legacy Cup. And it's really huge.
I've seen that in action.
Yeah, so it's really huge with our players, and we have 6 teams, and the 6 teams are divided amongst seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. And throughout the whole entire season, we'll pick one day a week. They'll have a series of competitions, whether it's a skit or challenges and team building activities. And so now we have a pretty we have a great opportunity for them to connect with each other and just build relationships and connections. And we always talk about, we're one program. It just reinforces that whole idea. So
Good.
Those are some of the systems that we have in place. We have some other ones as well too. I think probably our best system that we have is every Monday, at least early in the season, we send out a survey to our players, and we just simply ask them, how are you doing on the field? How are you doing off the field? Is there any way that we can support you?
You want player feedback?
Yeah, totally. And so we send that out every Monday, and it's great getting that information, because it's hard being a high schooler, and maybe parents are getting divorced, or maybe they're stressed out with school. But when we see those things, then we can go to them and be proactive and help support them however we can. So those are some of the systems that we put in place, and there are others, but those are probably the ones that stand out the most in terms of what we use to try to help shape the culture that we want.
Good, thank you. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, and you alluded to it already, is if you were speaking to a room of first-year varsity coaches, what would you tell them? And you mentioned the Covey principle of beginning with the end in mind, but I want you to elaborate a little bit. So you talked about when you were a young coach, and it was just, hey, let's win the title.
Yeah.
So, what's a little, preface you could add to that room full of first-year varsity coaches when you talk about begin with the end in mind? Yes, you want to be successful. What are some other steps then that you would add?
Yeah, I think one thing that's really helped me is defining what success is. There's obviously the metric of wins and losses, but I think that how you define success is critically important because that will drive your actions.
Okay.
And, if your definition of success is just wins and losses, then I think, you'll take shortcuts in a lot of different ways to just try to have that be your end product. And so I think how you define success is important. I think the other side of that as well too is always being open to learning. I think honestly one of the challenges I experienced early on was we won a state championship my first year, and I almost kind of thought that I arrived. Right? Like this is kind of like the young Philly.
I did
it, and like I literally don't think I dove in deep enough to continue to improve. And so, success can be something obviously that can make you very complacent. And so, always grow, never feel that you have, you have it all down. There's always things that you can pick up.
Okay, good. I know that you probably aren't where you're at, without having mentors. So what would you want your mentor to know that you've learned from them?
I think that some of the mentors in my life, I think it really came down to environment, and they created an amazing environment where as an assistant coach, like I wanted to show up to practice. As a player, players wanted to be there, and how they did that, it was amazing to see the balance of accountability, right, and then grace, right, as well too.
Sure.
And support and figuring out that balance for each individual and how they did that, because it really is an art, right? When do you push? When do you pull back a little bit? And so I would say that this is the number one thing. If you don't have a healthy environment, it's hard for anything to really flourish. And as a young coach, I would focus on that, above the X's and O's any day of the week.
Good. Okay, thank you. All right, Coach, our next segment is called Psych 101. Okay? So, again, you did have these questions beforehand. You may not remember, but that's okay. What's your best game or best win ever? And if you can't pick one, again, I know you have 4 state titles, but it doesn't even have to be a state title win.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. The state titles were great. But I think if there's one that really stands out to me, it was my boys team. I took over. They had lost, I think it was like 9 seniors the year before, and I knew it was going to be a hard year. And so going into the season, I got my juniors and seniors together, and we literally wrote out what we wanted our culture to look like, what we wanted our program to be, and then we started out writing steps on how to get there. And so we did all of this before the season even started, and we had this chieftain handbook is what we called it. And I knew that we were going to need that because I knew with how much talent we lost the year before, it was going to be a rough start to the season. This changing pieces around, trying to figure out the right blend of players. And we literally didn't win in our first 8 games. And it was just amazing, though, to see them just relentlessly dig in. And I could see the improvement as a coach, but a lot of times players are impatient and
Sure.
they want the instant feedback of a win. And so they hung in there, and we ended up winning, I think it was like 9 games in a row after that, and winning the league title. And then the biggest win was we had Bonnie Lake at the time, and they were defending state champs, and they were ranked number 1 in the state, and they came down to play us, and we ended up beating them.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people would have given us a chance in that game, but that win still stands out, as being, one of the greatest wins in my mind.
Good, thank you. How about your most haunting loss?
Oh man, the most haunting loss. That one's easy. So we won a state championship my first year, and we had a lot of players returning the second year, and we went through the whole entire league season undefeated, and we didn't even give up a goal the whole entire league season. And we played, I think, 2 or 3 playoff games, won those, didn't give up a goal, and so we had gone 18 games without giving up a goal, and we'd scored some 80 goals. And then we had a team, we had Liberty come down and play us at our home.
Liberty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah. We've had quite a few battles over the years. And they came down and they ended up beating us and upsetting us. And, that was the most painful, but I think it was also necessary for me individually in terms of my growth, because won a state championship the first year. Really a loss that hurt and stung a lot that second year, and I think that was it was a very humbling experience.
Who are the best athlete or best athletes you've ever coached? I know it'd be maybe hard to pick one, so
Yeah, I think that man, I've had so many, so I don't know that I can definitely give a best, but one that definitely stands out. His name was Spencer Baird, and he was an individual who didn't really, he worked so relentlessly hard, and his work ethic was just impressive. And he was the kid that was, Coach, what do I need to do? And always asking that question. And freshman year didn't really contribute on varsity, and sophomore year didn't really contribute on varsity, but just tireless worker. And then his junior year, you started to see it all kind of, come to fruition. And then his senior year, we lost our starting forward. We lost 2 of them for the year. And as a defender, as a center back, he ended up scoring 12 goals for us, and we ended up still being able to win the league title in large part because of him and just his athleticism, but his coachability and how he treated his teammates. I just thought it epitomized everything that we were trying to do in our program, and so he's definitely one that stands out.
Good, thank you. As a fan, what are your favorite sports teams or your favorite coach?
Favorite sports teams. There's a team in England called Arsenal, and so that's a team I've supported most of my life. And so from
How does
soccer,
Matt Newman feel about that?
Yeah. So my assistant coach Matt, he's a Manchester United supporter, and so there's a lot of text messages back and forth when they play against each other, and so. In the world of other sports, I'm a big fan of Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, and I just like how Pete Carroll operates, and he's a big culture guy, and been able to pick up some stuff from him, and so Blazers and anything local.
Sure, good.
I'm
Thank
into.
you. Okay, our next segment, Coach, just as we wrap this up, this is rapid fire. Just your initial answer. Okay. So, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Neither.
Coach, that's not one of the options.
Oh man.
Okay. Is salsa a dip or a sauce?
It's a dip.
Okay. What's a normal pizza topping that really shouldn't ever be on pizzas?
Anchovies.
Okay. And the last question. Let's say hypothetically you win a grand prize. Okay? But you have 2 options from this grand prize. The first option is a 1-year all expenses paid trip to Europe, including a $2,000 a month stipend, or 10 minutes on the moon. Which one are you taking?
Ooh, man. I would honestly, Europe's on my bucket list. I'd say Europe. Yeah.
You're not going to the moon?
Nah. What's there to do up there?
You're on the moon, Coach.
Yeah, it'd be a cool experience, but there's a lot of cool things in Europe as well, too.
That's fine. I appreciate it. All right, Coach Philly, we're going to wrap it up here. I appreciate it for you coming in today. Good luck on the boys' season.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and this is Tony Liberatore, Associate Principal at Fort Vancouver. Our next broadcast, we're going to try to track down an elusive Hudson's Bay coach as we finish up our first round of VPS Game Time X's and O's podcast. Again, have a good day, everybody, and thanks to Ian and Nick.
you.